welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to feel happier, healthier, and live longer too, then do we have the Positive Shift show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Catherine A. Sanderson, the Manwell Family Psychology Professor at Amherst College, and the author of a fascinating book that will absolutely positively change your mindset, The Positive Shift. And that's just what I want to talk with her about today, about mastering your mindset to improve your happiness, health, and longevity. That, plus we'll talk about kittens and rainbows. Gotcha. Barbie dolls and potato heads. Sensi shake and indulgence. The power of an F+, in Spanish that is, Robert and standardized tests, and what in the world the Tappan Zee Bridge and sweatpants, oh no, has to do with anything. I actually read the books. So welcome to the show, Catherine. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready, and thank you for that very on-point introduction.
Woohoo! All right, so before we dive right into things, were you always a positive child growing up?
No. And in fact, it's really for me ironic to have written this book because I'm not a naturally positive person. I wasn't a naturally positive child. And so one thing that I love about talking and writing and researching this topic is that I often thought that happiness was really just not something I was going to find. And I've learned that that isn't true. It is within all of us, even if some people have a head start.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to jump ahead of everything to get to the most important question here, which is then, how did you meet your husband? What's his outlook and how has he rubbed off on you?
Well, so I met my husband in college.
Yep.
We were good friends and started dating shortly after college graduation. And as I describe in the book, he is super positive, super optimistic, and it has clearly rubbed off on me.
So, and did that rub you the right way when you first started dating?
I would say initially I thought he was kind of crazy because I was like, you can't actually expect that all of these good things are going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're biased in a delusional sort of way. And of course, he probably thought the reverse about me.
So, how did you originally get interested in psychology? What did you choose to study?
I studied psychology as an undergraduate, and I came to that, I would say, very naturally by starting out in the pre-med track, wanting to be a pediatrician.
Yep.
And very quickly, it became clear that college science was really not my future academically. And so I moved to psychology, and I think that's really my passion.
Awesome. And then when did you say positive psychology, helping people make the shift? When did that become an interest of yours?
So for a long time, the field of psychology really focused on negative emotions, neuroses, depression, anxiety, and so on. And that was really the whole field, including when I was an undergraduate and I was studying this. And what research found really about 10 or so years ago is that there was a big shift within the discipline to focus instead on positive emotions, to focus on optimism and joy and contentment. And I sort of happened to be in the right place at the right time.
What are kittens and rainbow people? And do you need to be a rainbows people? Do you need to be one to become positive?
You do not. And I think that's a really important message because there are people like my husband who go through life in a really positive way. That's just how they think that the world is good and that good things are going to happen. And they are the kittens and rainbows people as I describe them. And if you're one of those people, congratulations. You might be one of those people. Are you one of those people?
I'm not. Actually, my training, thank you, Mom.
Yes.
I love you, Mom. My natural training is, holy crap, but I've trained myself to go, holy crap, wait, what's the positive that can come out of this? So like I was discussing off air, we lost a dear friend a few days ago. We had a miscarriage recently, and I'm going, miscarriage, we know she's just circling the runway, waiting for that right opportunity to come down. Our friend who passed on, I'm guessing she started dancing a jig the minute she got the other side and is having a blast. But that was not my natural state.
It was not your natural state. Right. And so I'm like you, that was not my natural state. And what I really think is important for people to recognize is that if you're one of the people like us who doesn't come to that positive way of seeing the world naturally, there are things that you can do to develop and train those skills.
Absolutely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Which means we want to spend less time on Facebook, don't we?
Sadly, that is true. All sorts of social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the whole set. Yes.
Tell me what the studies say about Facebook and loneliness.
One of the challenges is that people often feel, well, I'll go on Facebook and then I'll connect to people because look, here are all these people I went to high school with, or I live around the corner from, or whatever, and it's going to make me feel connected. But the reality is, when people are on social media, instead, what they're really doing is they're looking at other people's carefully curated lives, because people don't just put random things on social media. People portray lives on Facebook that are the lives they want to show other people that they're living. And that can make us feel worse in comparison about our own less glamorous, exciting lives.
So from there, thank you for sharing. So hopefully people step back, one step back from the social media at least. What are mental shortcuts and why does mindset matter?
Mindset matters because how we think about the world influences our health, it influences our happiness. Some evidence suggests it influences how we age and even how long we live. And here's a really simple example. We've all heard of the placebo effect. The placebo effect is an example of mindset, that if somebody's like, I have, a terrible cold, a headache, etc., and you give them a sugar pill and say, this is a powerful, anti-migraine medicine, the belief that you're getting something that will in fact make you feel better leads people to feel better. That's an example of mindset, and it's the placebo effect.
I guess the most important question I've got to ask is, what's the power of a lucky golf ball?
Oh, perfect example. That if you tell someone, oh, you have a lucky golf ball, as opposed to here's just a regular golf ball, they're more likely to make their putt. Again, power of positive mindset. It helps in sports as well.
So you would say then expectation creates reality.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things I was fascinated in reading your book, and it's beautiful study after study, is the importance or power of the subtle nuances to affect us. For instance, talking about subtle triggers, Barbie dolls, or Dr. Barbie dolls in this case, and potato heads.
Right. So really simple study. They gave little girls, preschool girls, one of two toys to play with, a Mrs. Potato Head doll or a Dr. Barbie. So of course, the Dr. Barbie has a professional image, the science mindset of the doctor. And yet what they find is that girls who've just played with the Dr. Barbie report less comfort, less sort of idealization in terms of a career in science or medicine, because the images, although they're portrayed as Dr. Barbie, are really feminine, sexualized images that don't expand girls thinking about their own career opportunities.
Wild. And it was just actually short exposure. Another study that I believe was short exposure, and everybody became decrepit as they were heading down the hall. NYU, old words versus neutral words.
Exactly. College students come in, they do some kind of a task involving scrambling words in a sentence. Unbeknownst to them, some of the students are scrambling words that cue old age, so wrinkled, gray hair, arthritis, etc. The students think the study is over, but in reality, this is where it just gets interesting. The researcher presses a stopwatch and they watch how long it takes students to walk down the hall. And yes, maybe not quite decrepit, but they in fact walk slower down the hall after having been cued in this very subtle way with words reminding them of stereotypes about aging.
Thank you. I always, when I'm coaching people, I'm always talking with them about watching their nutrition. And by that, I mean everything they ingest with their ears, their eyes, their nose, let alone their mouth. After reading all these different studies, how particular maybe are you about watching what you ingest on TV, in the media, things of that sort?
I am very mindful of cues that aren't hunger that trigger my desire to eat. So of course we think, well, I should eat when I'm hungry and not when I'm not. But all of us have cues, whether it's seeing delicious food in a bakery window, whether it's hearing a jingle for our favorite restaurant on television. So I'm pretty conscious that those subtle or subliminal cues can actually trigger my eating, and I try to be mindful of it. Sometimes more successfully than others.
Makes sense. We'll probably get into a fixed mindset, growth mindset, but I was fascinated by this one. And we've talked about Carol Dweck several times on the show. What's a failure mindset?
Well, a failure mindset is just sort of this pessimistic belief that no matter what I do, things aren't going to go well. There's no hope in even trying because I know I'm going to fail. It's really sort of a give up, quitting kind of a mindset. And as you can probably imagine, it leads to really negative outcomes.
So let's talk about, because we're talking about people who have those mindsets, they have a certain label about themselves. I've got a bunch of titanium parts in me. I could label myself as weak, as decrepit, as this or that. Sometimes, though, I'm called a bionic man by my wife. Other times she says I could flip you over and use you as a dowsing rod. And I say I'm just, extra strong with all this titanium parts. What's the importance of adopting a new label?
Yeah, that's a perfect example about how we can take something and we can look at it in a more optimistic, positive light or a negative light. I think we see this very profoundly with how cultures put different labels or mindsets on aging. So in the United States, there's lots of negative stereotypes about aging. People, as they get older, get decrepit and gray and they lose their minds and they're not very physically attractive. And in many other cultures, there's an emphasis on with age comes wisdom and experience, and that's who we should really pay attention to.
There's a great book, Christopher McDougall, Born to Run. He talks about the Tarahumara, these running people from Mexico in this amazing valley in there where they're kind of isolated, sheltered from the rest of the world. And once you cross 50, you start to become a good runner. Because their belief system of the Tarahumara is you get stronger and you get more endurance with age. So they took some of these runners, came up and did this Leadville 100 running race, maybe a little more than a decade ago, maybe a decade and a half ago. And they lied about their ages because they were afraid they'd be kicked out because they were in their 50s, and they won the thing.
That's a perfect example of mindset. I love that.
So let's talk about placebo effect real briefly, because there's one study in particular that I absolutely love, as I've had 7, 8. We're not even going there how many knee operations I have had. Bruce Mosley, Houston Veterans Affairs Medical Center.
Yeah, remarkable study that I got to be honest, a lot of people find creepy, especially if they've had knee surgery.
Yes.
Brought in people older men, veterans, having trouble with their knees, put them in one of three groups. One set had actual orthoscopic knee surgery.
Yeah.
One set had a minor procedure in which the surgeon scraped away some cartilage. Third set, they created a scar, cut the knee open, sewed the knee back up, that's it. And then they looked at these men for the next 18 months and they examined how do they feel, mobility, flexibility, pain, etc. And what they found? Nothing. Men in all three groups improved at an equivalent rate. And I want to be really clear. This is not to say that, all surgery is fake and no one should ever have surgery for any reason. It's all in your mind.
It has saved my life.
Exactly. In many people's lives. But it's an example of the power of positive thinking and how that may really have changed how these men behaved in ways that led to these improvements they saw in all three groups.
There's a study, thank you. There's a study, I can't cite where it is. I'm not sure if you've heard about it or not, where not only do researchers, I guess in some studies, researchers are told this is a good group of learning kids. These are, your accelerated ones. These are average. But I've also heard of caretakers or researchers with mice being told this is the accelerated group in the maze. This is the average group.
Yes, no, that's exactly right. And they've done it with mice. These are the smart rats, these are the dumb rats, and they find that students who are told, "Oh, you're working with the smart rat," those rats learn the maze faster. The study that you're describing was done at a San Francisco elementary school, and they in fact told elementary school teachers, some of the kids in your classroom have been identified as IQ spurters. They're just about to show this massive increase in intelligence. And what they found was that those kids, in fact, did show an increase in intelligence by the end of the year. Of course, there were no actual spurters. These kids were randomly drawn out of a hat to be identified as so. Great examples.
This is why, like in my family growing up, my sister and I took the IQ test. I came out as the smarter one. She didn't. My parents tracked me one way, tracked her the other. I call that a crime.
Oh, yes.
So, but we can use this for good instead of evil, which is, there's a study, Sensi Shake and indulgence. Parents can listen to this and learn how to tailor food choices based on how we label the foods.
Sure. So research has shown that just telling somebody you're having a really rich, high calorie drink versus you're having a diet, low calorie drink changes how our body responds in terms of the hormone levels that trigger hunger. So mindset seems to have a powerful influence on our physiological reactions.
And that leads to another favorite study of mine where we have women who are working at a hotel and what actually happens to their physical bodies based on what they're told.
This is probably my favorite study. I'm so glad that you brought this up. They brought in women who had jobs cleaning hotel rooms. They told all of them it's really important to get, the recommended physical activity. And then some of the women, they said, hey, and by the way, the work you're doing right now, cleaning hotel rooms, it counts when you vacuum, when you change bed linens, when you clean bathrooms, etc. That counts as part of your recommended physical activity. Then they followed up all of the women 4 weeks later, and they found that women who'd simply been told, by the way, what you're doing right now, it counts. Those women, in fact, had lost weight, had lower blood pressure, and had lost BMI, body mass index. So again, powerful example about how just telling somebody what you're doing already counts changed their bodies.
Awesome. And it also has to do with how and what we tell ourselves. I want to talk about the power of reframing stress. For instance, I read a book a day, and then before hundreds of thousands of people and the expert on that subject, I have to give a book report, or in essence, am quizzed and tested. That could be considered, oh my God, you're going to croak, or you could consider that good stress, and say it's actually making me stronger.
Right. That's a really powerful example, is that there's the role that the way that we think about the same event. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. Or, oh my gosh, this is exciting. This is invigorating, changes how you do your job.
So then let's talk about your son, Robert, and standardized tests.
So my middle child, Robert, is a pretty clear introvert. And I was worried about how he was going to do in terms of anxiety on the day he was facing the standardized test. In Massachusetts, we call that the MCAS. And of course, the popular press is all about, oh my gosh, kids and standardized testing and the anxiety, etc. So we're sitting at breakfast, and I said, I know it's going to be a really hard day, standardized testing day. And he was probably, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old. And he looks up at me and says, standardized testing day is my favorite day all year. And I said, well, good. And why? And he said, it's so quiet. Everyone just fills in the bubbles and no one talks. No one has to read aloud or work with a partner. And so there was a perfect example of, I had sort of assumed, oh my gosh, this must be so stressful. And for him, it's this delightfully relaxing day.
How do we start to flip that switch to take something that could be a real negative stressor, I'll put that in quotes based on the discussion, and flip it on its head?
So I think first, you got to be aware that we have that control. So I spent most of my life not understanding that, wait, that actually is in our control. I just thought they're horrible, bad, stressful things that happen, and that's just it, and there's nothing I can do. And so first, being aware we actually do control our mindsets. Your example of, now I'm going to put it in quotes, that we have some control. So step number 1 is being aware. Step number 2 is practicing, okay, how can I reframe this? How can I flip this on its head so that I can have a more positive experience of this particular event?
Beautiful. I'm going to go a little Kristen Neff on you here, who we've had on the show as well. It's going to be all right, Michael. It's going to be all right. Tell me the importance of self-compassion.
Yeah, so we beat ourselves up, and Kristen's work is a great example that many people beat themselves up. this thing happened, it's my fault, it's never going to get any better. And we're not very nice to ourselves. So, treating ourselves when things don't go as we want with some self compassion, with saying, it's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. This too will pass. It's going to be okay, is a really important part of changing our mindset, reducing our stress level.
It just got me thinking about mindset scar tissue, which is you listen to everything in this show today, and then you catch yourself not having a positive mindset, and then you get down on yourself for not having and you've created a feedback loop of scar tissue
Mhm.
over something that can be a real positive.
Good. So again, being able to catch yourself, wait, what am I doing? Am I beating myself up? Wait, could I look at this differently? And I'm going to be honest, it doesn't happen naturally. It doesn't happen naturally for me. The important thing is catching yourself when you're doing it and then interrupting that negative thought pattern and reframing it in a more positive way.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I was at the gym this morning. There's a beautiful gentleman there, 76 years old, who is still skiing like crazy. And he was talking about maybe my days in the bowls are done. And I'm like, and I made a comment about that. And he said, when you get to be my age, you will know that there comes a time. And my wife and I are looking at each other, we're gasping and going, and we send them all the love in the world. But that is exactly the nocebo effect, the most dangerous thing we can say to ourselves, isn't it?
Yes, and what's interesting in your example is that we often do it not only to ourselves, but to people around us. I gave a talk one time on this topic of mindset and health and aging, and an older gentleman came up to me at the end and he said, I have learned so much from your talk because what happens all the time is that my children who love me and care about me and support me, what they're doing all the time is saying, like, Dad, don't do that. We'll lift that box, or no, we'll drive you here, or no, don't worry about this. We'll do the cooking. And he said, and they're making me feel like I'm incompetent. And they're doing it out of love and generosity and kindness. But he realized after hearing my talk that they were unintentionally also sort of undermining his own independence and agency in ways that really aren't helpful.
Thank you. That reminded me, we have had on a few times Dr. Michael Merzenich, father of brain plasticity, and he says that the most dangerous thing in the world is a sidewalk without a crack.
Ooh, I love that.
He wants us to have more challenges. The older you get, the more that you actually want enrich your environment. Make it a challenging environment. You're having trouble with the stairs? Well, we'll work on that, but keep that staircase there above and beyond anything else because you need that challenges because it's use it or lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's true mentally and it's true physically. So older adults who learn new things, whether it's, taking a class in photography or doing crossword puzzles or whatever, that's a really important part of staying mentally active and again, use it or lose it.
A great example, well, I guess it's Dr. Professor Good Enough, and I love his name.
Yes, right. Wonderful example of somebody who in his 90s continues to work, to do research, and you know what? We may hear about him winning a Nobel Prize one of these days.
Phenomenal. What is subtle framing, and what does that mean for us?
So, subtle framing means that there are just a variety of little tiny shifts that we can make in terms of how we think about ourselves,
Mhm.
in terms of how we think about the world, that we often think about things that happen to us as calamities. And we can actually shift our thinking, shift our framing in terms of thinking of these as opportunities, as challenges, not disasters.
Beautiful. I have a trick that I use. I've got a little roll of tape right here. We had
Okay.
an expert on breathing, on the Buteyko breathing method years ago, Patrick McKeon. We had him on the show, and he was talking about how nasal breathing triggers a parasympathetic response, helps keep you out of the fight or flight. He talks about babies. They're obligatory nasal breathers. That's how
Mhm.
they would eat or drink. And I started taping my mouth at night, which gave me a deeper night's sleep, breathing in and out through the nose. And what I found is I can actually tape my mouth, this sounds a little bit nuts, in a smile and find myself smiling in the morning. Will smiling help us live longer?
Yes, 100%. And smiling is such a simple thing to do. There's a fascinating study that looked at the facial expressions on rookie baseball players, rookie baseball cards.
Yeah.
And they just measured, the degree of smile. Was it a flat expression or a slight smile or a big smile? And then they looked at how old these men were when they died.
Mhm.
And what they found was men who had this big beaming smile on their rookie baseball cards actually lived longer.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, for people struggling with this or starting to get an idea of this, what's the importance of a silver lining?
The importance of a silver lining is recognizing that the reality is bad things are going to happen. You have just shared, two really difficult things that have happened to your family and friends in the last, week or so, and the sad reality is bad things do happen. That people experience loss, professionally, loss personally, and they experience health challenges. That these are sort of the realities that we all are going to face, and we frankly can't go through life just avoiding them. It's impossible. So what do? We try to take some kind of silver lining when these things happen, that the opportunity to grow and push ourselves and develop in new ways, that those aren't adverse experiences that we want for ourselves or our families.
Mhm.
But if we can look at them in some type of a silver lining, it really helps us get through them stronger and better.
Thank you. It makes me think when I had NDE number one, I'm laying there cracked on the pavement. People are coming to scrape me up, get me to the hospital. And I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be the most positive experience in the world. Now, it may have been that I was choosing for it to be the most positive experience in the world, but I knew that I only have so much mental bandwidth. And if I am going to make it through, that I need to focus on that. I wonder if your husband had this in mind, second trimester, your third pregnancy, you got some really challenging information, and he's thinking, we're going to crank this around.
Yeah, that's a really great example. So, in my second trimester, my third pregnancy, I went for an ultrasound, and there were some indications on the ultrasound that the baby might have a serious problem, and basically would be unable to digest food, and she would be born, but she would die within the first year, and there was nothing that she could do about it. And I left the ultrasound, in tears. I couldn't talk. I just sort of envisioned, the baby dying and it just being horrible. And my husband, went to the store, bought a bunch of pink clothes. We found out
Woohoo!
the baby was a girl. Also, we had two sons at the time, and he was like, "She's going to be okay." And now, luckily, she was okay. She's now 14 and a little bit lippy and difficult, but very strong and healthy.
Yeah.
And there's an example again in which I really went into a negative spiral. My husband was able to find hope and optimism in that situation. And of course, he turned out to be right.
And I imagine that him helping you, and you probably recognized it pretty quickly, you've lived with him long enough, bringing you back to that positive mindset, I'm guessing had an effect on the outcome. It may not have changed whether she was completely healthy or not, but it changed how you carried her and your outlook and what you even passed on to her then.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, his ability to think positively, to keep hope, even when I felt all hope was gone, was a really important lesson for me.
Thank you. Speaking about all hope is gone, I can't believe I'm going to go there. I was in an RV on a book tour years ago, got broken into in Palo Alto, everything kind of taken out, and then I read about this study of what is happening in Palo Alto, and I'm going, oh dear Lord, what is taking place in Palo Alto? And tell us about comparison.
Yeah, so this one really breaks my heart. I have three teenage kids of my own, of two teenagers and one early 20s,
Yeah.
and so as a mom, this really speaks to me. In the last few years, there have been a really unprecedented number of kids who've died by suicide in Palo Alto. So these are basically high school
Yeah.
students, and Palo Alto has now been identified by the Centers for Disease Control as a suicide cluster. So a place in the country in which they've identified a higher than average number of people dying in this way. And what's ironic, of course, is that Palo Alto is a beautiful community. It's California. It's lovely. It's Silicon Valley. It's lots of wealth. So these are not kids who are worried about basic survival. Are they going to have enough food to eat or a safe place to sleep and so on? And yet It's a place in which there are huge amounts of wealth. It's in the shadow of Stanford University. And there's tremendous pressure on these kids from their peers, their teachers, their parents, their broader culture. And certainly, research suggests that that may contribute to kids who are, by all accounts, doing very, very well, feeling like failures.
So, and that brings us to the wealthy neighborhood paradox.
It really does, in that people often assume, oh, well, if I just had some more money, I'd be happier. That's all it would take. But the reality is, the wealthy neighborhood paradox tells us that people who are living in wealthy neighborhoods actually experience lower levels of happiness. And researchers believe that's because in wealthy neighborhoods, there's a big emphasis on comparison. Look what kind of car my neighbor is driving. Look how good their lawn looks, or how big their house is, or what kind of vacations they take. And it makes us feel worse in comparison.
Years ago, I'm recovering from that accident I told you about. I'm back on a bicycle. I actually have a crutch sticking out the back of the bicycle, which gives you an idea of how early I'm working to get myself going. A guy passes, drives by. I'm a car nut, and he drives by with this beautiful, like brand new silver Porsche thing. And I'm like, wow. And I kind of chase him down on the bicycle, want to ogle this car. It was kind of in my childhood. It was before I got into electric cars. I was looking at Porsches and stuff. And there's a part of me that's going, he's got it all together. His life is going great. And then I look and I see him. And he's a stressed out, middle-aged, oversized gentleman who's clearly, this is my guess, I don't want to put this on him, looks like he's having actually a miserable time. What can we learn from this?
Right. And so that's such a vivid example. I may use that in the future. It's such a vivid example of, you looked at him and were like, oh, he's got everything. He has this really fancy car and here's his life, etc. But the reality is, the car we drive, the house we live in, those are not the best predictors of happiness. And people can have all the trappings that we assume would make them happy, but inside, they're really not feeling it.
Let's talk about, it jumps ahead in the book, but let's talk about a really fun predictor of happiness, which is, and it can affect your health more than smoking, surrounding ourselves with people, being social.
Yes. What's really important, two things. One, having good high quality relationships. So it's not about having, thousands of Facebook friends.
Yeah.
It's about having good people in our lives who we can be our authentic selves with. We can talk about failure. We can talk about fear, that we don't have to just put on a good face. So one, having high quality relationships that give us a chance to have meaningful conversations. The other important point is surrounding ourselves with people who are happy. I like
Yes.
to describe happiness as contagious. And we've all had the experience of spending time with somebody who's happy. That kind of rubs off on us, makes us feel happier in turn. And so picking your people well is also really important.
There's a Silicon Valley VC who we've had on the show. We had him on like show number 1 or show number 2. Kamal Ravikant, author of Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. I love that book. Um,
Yes.
and he says, if you want to be fit, surround yourself with outrageously fit people. And so to add to that, if you want to be happy, surround yourself with outrageously happy people.
Absolutely. Great advice.
What is the Failing Well program at Smith College?
That's a program that describes people's failures. So often in life, we kind of go through saying, well, I shouldn't talk about failures. I should promote my successes. I should put on social media, et cetera, how good everything is. And that can lead people to have a sense that no one else ever fails. It's only me. So many colleges and universities, including Smith, have developed programs in which people publicly talk about personal and professional failures as a way of owning them, as a way of acknowledging them, and as a way of giving other people a sense of, oh, even these people who I really respect, really admire, think have it all together, they too, just like me, have experienced failure.
I like that you had a CV, a partial CV of failure in there of all the things you weren't able to, quote, achieve.
Of which there are many. So I talk about graduate programs in psychology that resoundingly rejected me. I talk about jobs I applied for as a professor, resoundingly rejected me. That everyone, including me, has had lots of failures.
What are the benefits then of, well, rather than benefits of failure, benefits of adversity?
While the benefits of adversity is it actually gives us an opportunity to develop skills and strategies
Yeah.
for coping when stresses do arise. So, research has shown that people who have experienced between 2 and 6 major life stressors, things like loss of a loved one, injury, illness, divorce, getting fired, big things, actually experience higher levels of happiness than people who've experienced no failure at all. And that's a sort of odd finding because you'd think, well, gosh, if you've experienced nothing bad, surely you must be perfectly happy. But the reality is, experiencing some number of failures, disappointments, rejections, hardships gives you skills and strategies. Basically, it's practice for coping better when more negative things happen. And that lets you counteract those negative things when they do occur.
Thank you. It also brings up a key word to me, appreciation.
Yes, that once we've experienced some adverse things, it gives us a better ability to stop and smell the roses, appreciate the small moments of life.
Very, very good. Um, what's the importance then of gratitude?
Research has shown that we often spend a lot of time thinking about the bad things in our lives, what we wish things had gone better, our to-do list, etc. And yet, if we can turn instead and think about what we are grateful for, just going to bed at night and writing down 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for in your life right now, not things you'll be grateful for once you win the lottery or whatever, but things you're grateful for right now, that can actually lead us to consistently feel happier because we're instead focusing on what's good, not what's bad.
Beautiful. From here, I want to go into some real how-to tips on changing your behavior and watching your mindset follow. And let's talk about the first one. Oh, wait, going to bed.
Yeah, that's such a good example because many people don't get enough sleep. We've all heard about it, right? Massive epidemic of sleep deprivation. And yet we know not getting enough sleep is associated with worse physical well being and also less happiness. So, getting enough sleep, it's pretty easy to sleep. And doing it more makes us happier and healthier.
I wonder if the more we sleep, the better practiced we get at it as well.
Right? Probably, right?
Another one would be picking up a book.
Another one is picking up a book that people who read experience better happiness. They also experience better health. Some research even shows that reading, especially novels, helps us gain empathy into other people. And so we have better relationships because we can kind of take somebody else's perspective, just like we do when we're reading fiction.
How did Harry Potter help fifth graders?
There's a great example that the Harry Potter series, of course, many kids, poured over those, that kids who read the Harry Potter series showed lower levels of prejudice because part of the Harry Potter series is describing how people can develop stereotypes, prejudice, and bias against other people. And so learning to perspective take helped kids actually become less prejudiced towards other people.
Beautiful. This next one, I had to yell to my wife in the other room, Pookie, you got to hear this. Having sex can be as happy as an additional $50,000 in income.
Yes, that is true. Now, I don't know if you shared the other part of this story with her,
No, I
but one of
kept
the
that out
difficult.
because it just.
Okay, am I not supposed to share it?
No, no,
Um,
no. You share it, but.
so the thing that's challenging in this, it is true that having sex makes people happy. What's a little bit challenging to interpret is that maybe it's that having sex makes people happy, or maybe it's that people with good positive relationships have a willing sexual partner, and so it may be that it's sort of a byproduct of having good, close romantic relationships.
I thought you were talking about the part that I might have neglected with her, which is the once a month.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. See, I didn't say it. You said it.
Guilty as charged. All right. Take a walk or take a hike.
Yeah, being outside, spending time outside is extraordinarily important. And if you can't spend time outside, I'm in Massachusetts right now. It's January. It's pretty cold.
Mhm.
Looking at nature from a window helps. Having plants inside, that also helps.
How about meditation? And do you have a practice?
I do not, although it's one of my New Year's resolutions to start doing that because, again, what the research is showing in psychology and neuroscience is that meditation is profoundly important for both psychological well being and physical well being. It's a great thing to do. It's cheap, it's easy. We all should be doing it.
Since you geek out on this stuff, yesterday we had on the co-founder of HeartMath. His name is Howard Martin. He has a device called M-Wave 2 or Inner Balance, which you hook up via your earlobe, measures your heart rate variability, and you can geek out to meditation and see how much heart coherence you can have. I think you would love this.
I will. I will. Thank you. I will check that out. Thank you so much.
Certainly, certainly. I like geeking out on all this stuff. I literally wear a watch which has heart rate variability, stress monitor on it. And I just play with this to see how our emotions, how our mindset, how it all affects us.
It is all so interrelated.
So beautiful. Tell us about taking a technology break.
So, one of the real challenges is that the mere presence of cell phones everywhere distracts us from people in our actual lives. Many of us have been, at a park, a restaurant, whatever, and we've seen two people together, but in reality, each of them are just texting the other one, and or somebody else not even there. And that's an example of how the mere presence of a cell phone, even if it's turned off, even if it's on a table, disrupts the quality and meaningfulness of conversation. So take a technology break, put away the phone, turn it off.
How about going from technology? Let's go to the opposite side. Let's talk about nature's technology, putting some green stuff in your house.
Right. It's a really important thing to do, that people who have green stuff in their homes, in their offices, feel more alert. They have better memories. They perform better on cognitive tests, and they feel more relaxed. So looking at nature, again, outside, inside, it's really important. It's really easy.
So tell us about why money doesn't bring happiness, but a Cubs game may.
So people often think, we hear it so often in our society, if I just had more money, then I would be happier. But the reality is we acclimate really fast to having greater wealth, and then it no longer has such a big boost for our happiness. My brother lives in Chicago, longtime season ticket holder for the Chicago Cubs. For years has been a losing proposition. And a couple years ago, he called me and said, what should I do with my World Series tickets? I could sell the tickets and make $10,000, or I could take my wife and two kids to a game. What should I do? And I said, well, Matt, what the research on science of happiness would say, and that is exactly what I said, is I said, you should do one of two things. You should either take your wife and kids to a game. It'll be this wonderful, fabulous experience, or you should sell the tickets, take the $10,000 and, go to Disney or California or, do some wonderful trip. What you shouldn't do is buy new living room furniture. Because what research really shows is that spending money on experiences, travel, tickets to the big game, a Broadway show, a concert, whatever, is more bang for your happiness buck than belongings, which we just adapt to.
So speaking of belongings, thank you for sharing on that. And they actually won that game, didn't they?
They did. It was the only game they won in Wrigley, so that was lucky.
So It was a good gamble he took there.
It was a good gamble.
So speaking about material possessions, I haven't had a car in my name, a whole series of circumstances in well over 10 years. I've been working to manifest an electric car for a couple dozen years. I've got a Tesla coming for me, kind of fell out of the sky. It's coming for me on Saturday. I'm extremely happy. It's being wrapped into one of the only Teslas on the planet, or yellow Teslas on the planet. It's going to be bright and shiny, beaming light yellow. And the person who's wrapping it asked me a couple weeks ago, do you want me to send you pictures as it's going through the process of being converted to a yellow car? And I said, no, it'll be more exciting if I have to wait for it.
I love it. I love it. That's a great example.
So tell us the pleasure of anticipation.
Right. So that's it. That one of the best things about looking forward to something, a travel, a brand new yellow car, is that we get to anticipate it. What will it be like? What will we do? What will we see? Where we will go on vacation, etc. And that anticipation is extraordinarily pleasurable. It's one of the reasons why spending money on experiences is such a smart thing to do.
And speaking about spending money on experiences, how about the experience of giving it away?
Yeah. Overwhelmingly, people who give money or give time experience higher levels of happiness. The people who volunteer in their communities, people who donate to charitable organizations they find meaningful, they also experience a real and lasting boost in happiness. In fact, even better than when they buy something for themselves.
I'm thinking of a study. People are given money to either spend on themselves or they can give it away. What does the study show?
Very consistently, if you spend money on other people, You experience higher levels of happiness than when you spend it on yourselves. And that's especially true if you spend money on someone else and also have the opportunity to do something with them. So, for example, to go for coffee with that person or so on.
Very, very cool. Even better than sticking some money under somebody's windshield wiper, or putting it in their meter. Although that can actually be illegal in places. Where it's legal, do it. You'll make somebody's day when they come out and find out that there's still money in the meter.
So true. Great example.
So, benefits of random acts of kindness.
Random acts of kindness are good for other people. They're also good for us. And one of the keys is that if you do a random act of kindness, it often spreads. So we've all probably heard about the, lines at Starbucks or whatever, in which each car pays for the car behind them,
Yes.
and they go on for, 32 cars or, whatever. And so if we do an act of kindness for somebody else, it will often also trigger subsequent acts of kindness. So we're basically creating a kinder, gentler world.
It's infectious. I love it. What is a gratitude letter?
A gratitude letter is a fabulous idea. It came from a professor at Penn, Marty Seligman, in which he has people think about someone who changed and shaped the nature and direction of their lives in fundamental ways. And then they write that person a letter. They then travel to that person and they stand in front of them and they read it aloud. Can you imagine how profound that would be for the person who's reading the letter and, of course, for the person who's hearing the letter?
Beautiful. On that note, let's talk about one homework assignment. I'm taking my coaching hat off, Catherine, giving it to you. What one homework assignment would you give people to take action to do today to help them to shift to a more positive mindset?
So I think the key is that it's extraordinarily important for people to choose things that fit with their own needs. So I often say when people ask me this question, happiness is not one size fits all.
Yeah.
So you and I have talked about a lot of different things. We've talked about sleep. We've talked about spending time outside. We've talked about giving. We've talked about avoiding comparisons. We've talked about meditation. My homework assignment is think about the different things that you and I have talked about, all of which there's lots of strong empirical evidence for suggesting these things improve psychological well-being and physical well-being. And my homework assignment is think about the thing that appeals to you the most, grab that one
Beautiful.
and start doing it.
I love it because that's the gift that's wrapped around your heart, because that's what you're most passionate about. So you've got the energy going for you. What advice would you give parents today to help their kids with a positive mindset?
Yeah, so I think that's extraordinarily important because so much of the time we hear about massive anxiety in kids, that kids are anxious, they're stressed, they're worried, etc. And so as parents, what we really want to be doing is giving our kids tools to find happiness in the future. So what I say is use these strategies yourself, but also model them for your kids. That your own goal is not, do I have a nicer car than the neighbor? Or does our family take a better vacation? Or does my kid go to a more prestigious college? What my goal is feeling happy and modeling that happiness for people around me, including my kids.
Thank you. And to me, the most powerful thing that I've gotten out of this book so far, amongst I love the studies and geeking out on them, and sharing
Me
them
too.
with my wife and with everybody, all my coaching clients,
Yeah.
is how much more, and I'm fairly precise at how I think with myself, but I can go awry. There's my default programming, default mode network. It comes back, it kicks in. But reading this book has made me even more cognizant of the thoughts I'm using, or the words that I'm using with myself.
Oh, that's a really interesting point, and I'm so glad that you've taken that from it. I'm so glad. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you.
So, and I bring that up since we're talking about parents and their kids, because watch what the language is you're even using with yourself around your kids, because they are watching and learning from it.
Yes, and we see the example in that many times parents are very well-meaning and they say things like, "Oh, you're so smart," or "You're so good at math." And that seems like a really positive, nice thing to say to somebody. But the challenge is that can have unintended negative consequences, because if you have the expectation of, "Oh, some people are good at math, some people are not good at math," or "Some people are smart, some people are not," then there's actually a real risk of doing something that suggests you're not smart or you're not good at math. So having those kinds of labels that emphasize natural ability or talent can actually undermine intrinsic interest, and it can undermine effort. Because if you don't try very hard at something and you don't do well, it's because you just didn't try. And so that suggests that it's better for parents to emphasize the importance of growth, the importance of effort, and not natural ability or talent.
I love that. It makes me think of a resilient mindset, which is to say, you may or may not be good at math or this or that, honey, but if you put your mind to it, you will find a way in any of these areas.
Yes, and that's true about academic success. It's true about personal success. It's true about adopting a new, more positive mindset for those of us who don't come by it naturally.
Thank you. And on that note, where can people go to find your amazing book and to find out more?
Well, I hope they can find it everywhere. It is available in bookstores. It's available online on Amazon. And people can also check out my website, which is sandersonspeaking.com, where you can purchase this, but also watch videos of talks that I've given on this topic as well.
Fantastic. And if you didn't catch sandersonspeaking.com, come on over to inspirenationshow.com and we'll get you over to sandersonspeaking.com.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any last words? This has been really, really, really fun, Catherine. And the amount of information we've covered and you have covered in an hour may be a record here. Any last words of wisdoms you want to share with people today?
Everyone can be happier. It comes easier to some than others, but if you're not happy, you can learn to be happier. And I'm living proof, and I think you're living proof as well.
Woohoo! And in that case, thank you, Mom. Thank you so much, Catherine. This has been phenomenal.
Thank you for the invitation and best wishes for the new year.
Thank you. Thank you. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the positive shift, and begin mastering your mindset today and shine bright. Woohoo! Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to seeing the exciting news when she does arrive.
All right.
Or he, yeah.
So she or he, it's interesting. We've been saying she, and we have all sorts of woo-woo guests on the show who've been saying she. Until this past week, somebody said, well, maybe this next time around it's a he. And we're going, oh, crap, we got the girl name figured out, all this stuff. All right.
All right. Take care. Nice meeting you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!